So last week, as a way to get back into automation after being away for a few months, well, I guess weeks, I made this 7,000 horsepower abomination of a limousine. And today we're going to be taking a different turn because I've read your comments. I hear you. Sometimes I make stuff that's just ridiculous and it's not made to be realistic or interesting beyond that. But let's just try and make something a little bit more realistic. We'll try to reel it back in a little bit, maybe take a zero off the 7,000 and see what there is to see. Not with this limo though, something else. And now, because planning is not something I've really been doing a lot of recently in terms of YouTube stuff, I've kind of just been winging it and having a good time with it as well. I'm going to wing this as well. The first body that I see that sort of catches my eye is what we're going to build today. Boom, this thing. It's supposed to be a van, but it's a hatchback. Let's do it. Oh my goodness, it's tiny. Okay, yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. I've built something with a very similar back end to that before, but never this specific body. It's all new. And 2007 is our year as well. I'll explain why in a bit. So recently I've been thinking about a bunch of things. I have been wanting to upgrade my truck a little bit. I want to get a cap and I want to get some other stuff for it. And then I was looking at classifieds, looking at truck stuff when I saw it. A 2007 GT500 for sale for a decent, affordable for me price. And things are happening in my mind right now. Obviously, I'm not ready to make any moves like buying a new car. At this point, we just bought a house. But I'm dreaming. I'm dreaming a lot. And I've been thinking about the GT500 as kind of the perfect car for me because I'm scared of a lot of the more exotic vehicles. As much as I'd love to own a Porsche or an SL Mercedes or AMG, obviously, anything S in Audi territory, BMW M cars, I'm scared of maintenance and I'm scared of repairs on those cars. Whereas something like a GT500, it's got a much more common chassis, more common engine, at least in terms of architecture. It should be easier to fix if something goes wrong. Life is too short to drive boring cars, and today we're going to be making a boring car for a reason. This is the contrast to my other discussion about GT500, about other cars as well. I don't know. I want to talk about this with you guys, so give me your comments on what your thoughts are about driving an actual fun car every day and basically spending money you don't need to versus taking that Prius to work and saving that cash. What's the benefits? What do you think? Obviously, I'll give my opinion as well. But let's just make a 1.6 liter, kind of low, actually it should be higher revving probably. Higher revving 4-cylinder. A little bit of context, I drive about 40 minutes each way every day to work. So I'm spending an hour, 20 minutes in the car every weekday, minimum, basically, on my way and home from work. Currently, I drive most of the time, pretty much 4 days a week, I drive a hybrid RAV4. That is my wife's car, but it's our best car in terms of fuel economy. It's excessively boring and not fun to drive in the slightest, but it gets me to work and back, and it doesn't cost a lot to do it. Occasionally, I drive my truck to work. It's a 2019 Ram 1500 with a Hemi. Still a lot more fun than the RAV4, but it's a truck. Like, it's not fun. It's still a useful tool to me, and I use it for other things like hauling stuff home all the time, but it's still a boring car for the commute. Now, I used to be an Infiniti guy, so I had an Infiniti G35 that I drove every day. It was an automatic, unfortunately, which made it not as interesting as it could have been, but that was a decently fun car to drive, especially with the noises that those engines make, with a proper exhaust system, not the trombones that people have these days. Still though, wasn't a particularly exciting car, but it did take premium gas and it was expensive to run. Honestly, equivalency wise, it probably costs as much in fuel as my truck does, which is insane for a car. But for some people, it's worth it. So I've often thought about getting back into that luxury car game. I was thinking about picking up a relatively new Lexus. I was going to get an IS350. Just an IS350F Sport. It seems like a decently fun vehicle with the V6 all-wheel drive. And still, it's going to be an automatic because it's a Lexus, but pretty decent daily driver, I would think. But I'm wondering now in my mind, I'm like, man, I'm going to drive this for a couple weeks. I'm going to enjoy it, but then it's going to become boring because it's the same thing every day, right? There's a certain level where it's too much as well. Like if you were to drive a stripped out race car to work every day and you have to get into a 6-point harness, like that's not going to be very fun after a while. But as another example on the other side of things, I was driving my Tiburon to work every day a few years ago. I drove it for probably 6 months straight. I just drove it every day. That was a further drive. It was like 45 minutes each way, maybe. But I was getting tired of driving that car. Manual transmission, yeah, but also very small, very low, which is fine, but then also very loud on the inside, and pretty harsh suspension as well. Not fun after a while. Some days I just want to go home in comfort. That just wasn't the case with that car. So ultimately, my question to myself is, would I enjoy my work days more if I knew that when I left, I was hopping into something unique, interesting, and I guess a little bit more tactile, something that is engaging to drive? But then some days I'm going to be so tired I don't necessarily want to do that. And I've come up with a few different answers, at least for myself. The biggest thing is, don't drive the same thing every day. Now, I realize that's not exactly possible for most people. I'm in a privileged position to be able to say that I have 3 cars. That's a lot, even though only 2 of them are functional at the moment. Most people don't have that option. But if I drive the same car every day, then it's going to become stale. So switching it up is important. And so I say that, but then the reality of my situation is that I'm switching between 2 basically boring vehicles. If I had one exciting car, then that would be like the Friday driver. That's the one I've been thinking about. At the end of the day, basically what I'm doing is attempting to persuade myself that I need a fancier car, something more interesting, something a bit more of a project, even though I already have a project car I don't spend enough time on. That's just not how time works these days when you've got children. So a question I've been beginning to ask myself is, why would I settle? As somebody who really enjoys cars and somebody who likes cars, why would I settle for cars that I find boring? That's something that stings a little bit as I think about it more. Sometimes I'll ask myself, like, am I really an enthusiast? And in fact, somebody who has a bit of a following as well in terms of cars. So it's like, am I a good example to the people that watch me when I talk about my cars? Am I somebody who's respectable in the community? And respectable to myself as well. Does that stuff even matter? Probably not really, but it's the kind of stuff that goes through my mind every once in a while. Side note, I saw a Jaguar the other day, and it was just the saddest looking face on that car, so I'm attempting to recreate the same type of sadness in this car and its driver as well. So as a true enthusiast, and I'm using that term as loosely as humanly possible, should I not just buy the most interesting car that I can afford? Or should I not be the one who chooses to buy a crusty BMW instead of buying the actual like nice Corolla for the same price? Because people tend to overvalue their old BMWs for some reason. So those are the kind of ideas that come into my mind when I think, man, I should buy a cool car just because I should have a cool car, being the type of person I am and the person that is interested in cars as I am. I can't let my life go to waste driving boring cars, right? At least that's the thought. So I think that kind of thinking does work in some concept, but in a lot of others it doesn't. Like, the reality is that even if you love Ferraris, you may never have a chance to own one. You might just never have that money, which is okay. Like, the reality is that those cars are ridiculously overpriced for what they are. Realistically, nobody should be buying them for that money. I would hazard a guess that the vast majority of us do not own our dream car. I would guess that probably 95% of us don't own our dream car, and probably like 80% of us never will. Or we'll have to adjust it to something that's a little bit more realistic in order to get that dream to be satisfied. So for me, as an example, one of my dream cars is the Mitsubishi Evolution 6, which is not exactly an outrageous car. It's not a super hard car to buy, or at least it didn't used to be. I mean, things have changed in the Japanese market, but that is a semi-reasonable, semi-affordable dream car. Not saying it would be a good buy, because the 4G63 is not necessarily the most reliable of the engines in those cars. They tend to break. in catastrophic ways, and that would not be good. But at least in terms of purchase price, it is a relatively obtainable vehicle, and something that I might actually be able to get one day. Maybe. I've just realized from this view, with this light, this is basically a Durango. It looks exactly like it. For some people, they dream about owning a Pagani, and to you, I say, my goodness, good luck. Those cars are not cheap. Or maybe a little bit more realistically, like a Lamborghini, Ferraris. These cars are expensive. Most people are never going to own one, or even be able to drive one in their lifetime, unless they rent it. But cool cars don't necessarily have to be dream cars. Cool cars can be even just rare versions of normal cars, like an ST Focus or Fiesta. Those are cool. I mean, the reality is that I can't really put any limit on what's cool and what's not, because that's very solidly my own opinion, right? There are some cars that people think are cool that I just think are terrible, but that's my opinion. Circling back to the discussion that this originally started at, basically, just because I think that the RAV4 Hybrid is a boring, not that interesting to drive car, I'm going to say that most of you probably would think the same thing if you drove one, but to some people, it's the coolest car ever, and that's kind of a bit of a side point here. Don't let my ideas of what's cool just mess with yours. There is a lot of stuff that's cool about that car, and I'm definitely not saying it's a bad car by any means. It's a very reliable appliance. But yeah, at the end of the day, in my own personal ideas of things, I know that driving a cool car would definitely give me something to look forward to at the end of the day, and that's something that I will eventually do. I've always had the goal to buy a car that I can actually take to car shows, or at least own a car that's worthy of car shows. Every car show around here is usually classics, so it's gonna have to be something that's classic-ish. I've got a few projects I need to finish first before I get into anything crazy. Basically, got to finish my garage, and then I'll actually have a place to put any fancy vehicles I get, so that's sort of the plan. Finish the garage, see how much money's left over, maybe buy a car, just maybe. If I can convince my wife. That's the main thing in the way. And also not go broke and end up on the streets because of it. It's not worth it to get a Mustang. In the meantime, I'm going to be just enjoying the Tiburon that I have, even though I can't drive it because it's broken, and going to work every day, not particularly excited about the drive aspect of things, but at least I'm getting there reliably. That's all I can ask for. And throughout this entire discussion, you have just witnessed me make a 92.6 horsepower pretty light. It's 1146 kilos. That's actually a little bit heavy, I think. It is manual though, so it's a little bit more engaging, and it has a Lancer style front end, which is super cool. Love this style. But Durango back end, weird, sad looking car with like eyebrows up front. Normal vehicle, nothing crazy. Let's take it for a drive. So here we are in beamng driving what might just be somebody's dream car. This is the West Coast map. This is the Chinatown street, and let's go for it. You might not be able to hear this car because it's excessively quiet, but that's just what happens when you put full mufflers on these things. They're just really, really quiet, but that's alright. That's what you want in a car like this. City car doesn't need to be loud. When I was a kid, I was super into cars, and I really, really wanted to drive, and I was desperate. Like, I would drive literally anything and everything possible. Even like the crappiest vehicle on the planet, I would have taken it because I was just desperate to drive. And when I think about that, I think like, man, I'm spoiled these days. I have cars of my own. I have a project car. I always dreamed about having a project car and how many hours I would spend on it. And then I got into RCs to try and fill that void, although it wasn't quite enough. I was desperate to drive something, and now I have that chance every day. And I take it for granted. It's hard to be content when you get used to what you have, so I don't know. I'm worried that I'm going to buy a car that I've been dreaming about forever, and then I'm going to become indifferent about it. That's something I've been worried about for a long time. So yeah, what do you think? Are you in the same kind of boat as me? If you're younger, then you definitely have a different idea of things, especially if you haven't had a chance to drive yet, or you don't have your first car yet. That might make a big difference for some of you. My first car was a Subaru. That's sort of how I was introduced to all-wheel drive and all-wheel control as well. I had a lot of fun with that car in the snow. And then from there, it's been, well, all the other stuff that you've seen on my channel. I think you've seen everything. Okay, maybe this video got a little bit too philosophical, a little bit too ideas heavy and not enough execution, but let's just say that there are people who race Geo Metros, okay? There are people who absolutely love Geo Metros. They are not necessarily my people, but hey, if they're passionate about cars, that's enough. I can be interested in that kind of thing too. And I think I would be if I was whipping one around a track. Who cares what it is at that point? You're having fun. So yeah, definitely pursue your dreams, whatever those might be. You got dreams of driving certain cars or owning certain cars. Definitely try them. See what you think. And then, I mean, keep it realistic. If you dream about Lamborghinis, but there's no hope ever of you getting a Lamborghini unless you win the lottery, maybe come up with something else, because that's just not gonna work. You'll never reach that dream. Let's be honest. Some of you might, though. Holy smokes, some of you might. But, yeah, most of us aren't. I don't know. I think if I was super wealthy, I wouldn't even be buying those cars. I just have a load of the cars I wanted when I wasn't wealthy. Give me 3 GT500s, come on. But until then, guys, thank you for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this introspection and me running a red light as well. Just don't look too close. We're going to the Turbo Burger. Gonna go make an order. 2 number 9s, a number 9 large, number 6 extra dip, number 7. Okay, I forgot the rest. Yeah, I'll take a $5 a month YouTube memberships subscription, please. Going along in the ranks of Overlord, J Pope, Davis Heister, Goofy Plays, Mancini Country, Shadow Jasper, I Look Fall High Milk. Yeah, those guys. Yeah, I'd love to join them, yeah. And then also Patreon as well. I'll take a Patreon too. So thank you to everybody who is willing to fulfill that order. And I'll see you guys again soon. Very soon. VR hopefully soon. I've been working with them to fix it. We gotta get into that VR stuff. It's gonna be good. I heard Flat Out VR is coming out. Like, what the heck is that? I'm gonna have to check it out next time.